Well, welcome to Yada Yahweh Radio and our Torah study program. My pleasure to be with you. We do have Larry and JB with us this evening. Kirk called in. He was part of the observations program, but Kirk is very much under the weather. We don't know if he'll try to call back in again this evening. But what we're going to do is pick up where we were in observations with a quick review of the material that got us there, which is from Isaiah chapter 2, beginning around 11. And just to set the context here, we had spent 4 or 5 programs on the first 10 statements in Yahweh 2. And, Yahweh 1 is all about God saying, I did my best to treat you as children, to raise you, to nurture you, to do everything I possibly could in a family-oriented relationship, treating you as my sons and daughters, and you just flat out rejected me. And you became religious, and you established your own religious festivals, your own religious rites, and frankly, I find them disgusting. So that's a summation of the first chapter. The second chapter.
What chapter are we into here? I'm kind of in observations. I think I pulled up the wrong one.
Yeah, chapter 7. So here now in the second chapter of Yahweh, the first 10 statements are all overwhelmingly positive. Yahweh is announcing the connection between Mount Moriah and Zion. He is telling us that his home for his family is going to be built on the summit of Mount Moriah, which means that it's going to be built up there where essentially there is nothing at this point, never has been anything, but definitely not on the corrupt Temple Mount. And that we're all going to be there. We're going to be radiating light. It's going to be a joyous party. But as we mentioned earlier today on the observations program, that for us to be in a unbridled and totally liberated celebration, there's something profound that has to change with this planet. And that is that God has to rid it of religion and politics and militarism and financial malfeasance, all of which are very corrupting influences. And so to do that, those who are the uppity-ups in the world, the elitists, those in positions of power, are going to have to be diminished. And they, what we found is all of their artifacts, all of their temples and shrines and capitals and fortresses and you name it, are going to be destroyed. They're going to become literally worm rot, according to God. But now he turns his attention to the individuals. And he has this list of things that he's against, and we're going to go through them quickly since we went through them earlier today. But we're going to pause when he says, I'm against the hills, because we have to figure out, all right, God's not got nothing against a hill. So what is he referencing here? All right, so it begins. Then the haughty and arrogant appearance, perspective, and perceptions of mankind shall be diminished and degraded, reducing and collapsing the spatial dimension of those individuals. It's interesting here that he's going to quickly move to the elitists, but this isn't the elitists. This is the haughty and arrogant appearance, perspective, and perceptions of mankind. The single most popular religion in the world today is socialist secular humanism, where man is essentially the highest form of life. He is more important than God. He's more important than anyone. In fact, even man-made global warming elevates man to the position where he actually can influence the planet. And so the national religion of the media, of politics in America, and to a large degree now business. I mean, when you watch the commercials like Amazon where an imam and a Catholic priest buy each other knee pads so they can go pray together, you know that political correctness has run amok, and that's what he's talking about here. And I think it's likely that the Toralist one, known as the Antichrist, will fundamentally be a socialist secular humanist.
He's using the term gabuth there, and of course, there was a group of people he had wiped out, when he was having all the tribes destroyed in the land. And one of them was Gabon, which meant idolatrous heap of ruins. There's your hill, for one thing.
Yeah.
But, I just thought I'd throw that out there. Yeah.
That's what he's talking about here. But in this particular case, this is man idolizing himself. The national religion, the secular humanism that's practiced today, its primary cathedrals are universities.
I think
priests or professors.
Yeah.
So he says the haughty and arrogant appearance, perspective, and perceptions of mankind shall be diminished and degraded, reducing and collapsing the spatial dimensions of those individuals. So he's previously he dealt with with the artifacts of religion and power and politics. And now he's dealing with the host, the individuals that have embraced them. So he says, approaching the set-apart aspect of Yahowah will be inaccessible on that day, which is his day. Two key aspects here. We're dealing with the time of Yahweh's return. And what he says is when he returns, he will be inaccessible to anybody who thinks that humankind has achieved things that are worthy. That mankind's militaries are worthy, mankind's universities and education and teaching and learning and whatever the achievements might be, he's saying, for those, I am unapproachable. So we are going to reach a time where it's going to be impossible to accept the terms and conditions of the covenant.
Well, certainly upon his arrival, that would be true, because then he becomes the disingenuous God again. In other words, you've said to me yourself, when you were the billionaire in the halls of power, they were, people are attracted to power. They're more disingenuous.
Correct.
They're more likely to be real with you when you're sitting there getting your hair cut in a barber shop somewhere.
Correct.
Yeah, I know. And so, he's in a situation here where his power is now viewable. I mean, the same power we all see today, the rest of the world's behind the curve. And he would be very disingenuous if he said, well, okay, you're okay then. Come on in. You're attracted to power.
Yeah, just to speak about that for a moment. When I was a billionaire, I went to a local barber shop where the haircuts were $5. And there was no appointments. You just sat in a chair and you waited your turn, amongst the moms with kids and everybody else. But it was a nice old barbershop. Bill Clinton charged the University of California $250,000 for a 20-minute speech, and then on the way out of town, he flew Air Force One to LAX. And
to get a $400 haircut.
Had the airplane prevent any other planes from taking off or landing, and he brought in a stylist to cut his hair in Air Force One while they shut down the airport. That's the difference between...
it's important that he looks good. It has to do with national security here.
But that's why God... there's a billion reasons why. But that kind of arrogance of, I'm that important, is the kind of thing that God's just discussed. Now, it also says, in that day, which is his day, for those who do not listen to the observations program, I saw Christy's name here, and I know she is still posting them. And I think, JB, you're also posting them on your site, the observations program. But what we talked about there is really interesting, and one of the things that I shared is, and I'm repeating it now for those who've listened to both programs, but the reason I do that is because by repeating things, that's how we transfer them from short-term to long-term memory, and I think this is a fairly important observation that's good for us to remember. God is saying that He is going to return. He's approaching on the day which is His day. And so I would ask you, first of all, what is His day? There's 7 days on His calendar.
That's Kippurim. That's the awesome day.
Right.
That's Kippurim.
Okay, but now think about this for a moment. As far as I'm concerned, the most important day is Matzah. And second onto that would be Pesach, and third onto that would be Bikurim, and fourth for me, from my perspective, is Shavuot.
Yeah.
In fact, of the 7, the least important to me is reconciliations.
Okay, well that may be.
I'm not being reconciled on that day. Hey, at least on Towrah, I've got a purpose.
Yeah.
And on Sukkah, I get to enjoy the result.
But he's saying on his day, so you think his day's Matzah he's talking about there?
No.
I just told you. That's from our perspective. From his perspective,
you gave the right answer. I was telling you from my this. It doesn't say here he's going to return on Craig's favorite day.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I'm agreeing. I mean, it's Kippurim.
Craig is facetious because I'm a nobody. But from man's perspective, once we become part of the covenant, I think most of us. I don't think I'm saying things here that would be any different than the rest of you. If you were to say what days on Yahweh's calendar are the most important to you, well, being perfected would be the single most important. Becoming immortal would be the second most important. Being adopted to His family would be the third most important, and being enriched and empowered would be the fourth. And fifth would be Sukkah, the end result.
The train out of town.
Right, with the sixth being the opportunity to be used on Towrah. But the day that doesn't mean squat. I mean, that's a bit of an overstatement. The day doesn't mean anything to me other than my friend is going to enjoy it immensely. Yahowah. So Kippurim only means something to me in that it is going to be enormously satisfying for Yahweh. So you think about, why would Kippurim be His favorite day when it is, of the 7, my least favorite of the 7?
Because He's setting things right. He's setting things right, and right there, his family's going to know His name. I mean, these are the things that are important to Him, and they're important to us too. And
he's going to reconcile
knowing
his
you, Craig,
with his family.
That's going to be an important day for you too, because you're going to get to laugh at these haughty people in their flimsy robes, acting like drag queens.
They're going to be instantly incinerated and then diminished to nothingness. But certainly, when I say it's the least important of the 7 most important days in human history. So
that's still pretty important.
So I'm going to rank it up there as really important. It's among the 7 most important days in human history, and as I said, I'm going to enjoy it because the God who I have come to enjoy, whose company I've come to enjoy, is going to enjoy this day more than any other. I mean, I want to tell you that Pesach and Matzah were not much fun for him.
Yeah.
Okay?
No, they were not.
But reconciliations will be a lot of fun for him. And so the reason it's his day is the things that you've already hinted at. His whole purpose in creating the universe was to have a family, enjoy a family, and on this day he gets to reconcile his relationship with his family. This is the ultimate feast.
Remember, upon that return, he doesn't melt them all. He melts down those attacking warriors, but their leaders he actually talks to. He actually talks to their leader. How about all these people you harmed? Oh, that came by way of my lover's house.
Yeah,
he admits he's been merchandising people forever. I think I'll enjoy watching that.
Yeah, I think that's going to occur at their trial. I think that on this day he's not going to spend a lot of time chit-chatting with him. I think that'll probably occur at their trial. And understand that from this moment on, time as we know it is no longer operable. Right. It's no longer operable as time as we know it. So when we say, I think that's going to happen at a later date when he judges them, well, the difference between year 6,000 Yah and year 7,000 Yah, it's not going to matter to us. It's just not going to matter. So it's a really small detail here. But the day that is his day is the sixth day. I mean, the seventh day, which is 6 plus 1 equals 7, is the ultimate destination. But this is the day that he's coming for mankind. 6 is the number of man. He's coming for his family on this day, which is why he's eliminating everybody else. So important just to understand why it was this is his day, particularly when the Christian objection to us telling them that October 2nd, 6:22 p.m., Jerusalem time, which is the beginning, the first minute of Yom Kippurim in year 6,000 Yah, is when he's going to return, and they will say, no one knows the day or the hour.
Day or the hour.
I know the day, I know the minute, I know the second. It's not hard to tell. All you have to do is make connections to understand. All you got to do.
Not be ignorant and not be irrational.
Right. You've got to think it through. In fact, everything that follows here, you have to think to understand it. Okay, indeed, surely, the day for the approach of Yahweh, the spiritual instrument, shall be a time of degrading diminishment against all of the arrogant and haughty elitists who have risen to positions of authority. Well, that's really straightforward now. So, mankind's arrogant perceptions of those who have bought into political correctness, social or secular humanism, multiculturalism, those who have bought into that, which would be the vast preponderance of young people, the vast preponderance of educated people, have bought into that. And so that's the first thing on the list. The second thing on the list is actually the leaders themselves. These are elitists. These are those individuals who have risen to positions of authority. Now, you would have to say that every military leader is in a position of authority. Every corporate, international, world corporation, international corporate leader is in a position of power and authority. Every political individual, now we're not talking about city councils here, but any state or federal level position would be having risen to a position of authority. Being a bishop, a cardinal, or a pope in a religious order like Roman Catholicism would be under this risen to positions of authority. They're toast. God's against them on this day. Those who, and by the way, there's no forgiveness at this point. It's over. God's against you now.
You missed your opportunity.
There's no remedy for this. Yeah, you've missed your opportunity. You didn't listen when you should have listened. It's over for you now. So all of the arrogant and haughty elitists who have risen positions of authority, those who have ascended to positions of power, and the highest ranking and most prominent. I mean, that's the whole thing. What else could you add to that if you wanted to include all religious leaders, all political leaders, all corporate leaders, all academic leaders, military leaders? Are there any other words in Hebrew that get you there?
He's not so pro-government. He's not like big government.
No, big government's in trouble. Militaries are in trouble. Government leaders are in trouble. Religious leaders are in trouble. Academic leaders. Anybody who is risen to a position of power or authority or is in a high-ranking or prominent position, God is against.
Yeah, you can almost bet when you hear somebody.
You mean God didn't pick Donald Trump to save our country?
No, he did not.
You can take almost any person that the world holds in high esteem. Mother Teresa, Mohandas K. Gandhi, the list.
Sure.
Who's Martin Luther
little
King
bald deal in the orange sash, the guy from Tibet,
that guy.
He's another one of those.
The Dalai Lama,
Dalai Lama.
You can
very much.
take almost everybody that you hear these quotes from all the time. You see these quotes and everything, and they're all people that the world holds in high esteem, and every one of them are unknown to Yahweh. I have yet to see the world actually hold up anyone other than Moshe as a caricature, not the real Moshe, but as a caricature that knew Yahweh. I mean, really, they just don't. They do not.
No.
And it's astounding, really.
Yeah,
so you can bet if the world
Abraham,
loves it, it's wrong.
Correct. If the world loves it, it's wrong. So, the other thing we talked about on observation, I won't go into much detail here, but he says he's Yahweh, the spiritual implements, Yahweh Sabbath. Yahweh Sabbath is an extremely important concept because it's used over and over and over again. When Yahweh says that he is associated with the Shabbat, what he is telling us is that is the way that he is going to interact with these people. It's the way that he protects us, is with his Sabbath. It is the way that he gets the things that he wishes to do in our world, he does through them. There's this misnomer in our society, particularly amongst religious people, that either do the sign of the cross before they try to kick a field goal or point to the heavens like Pujols does after he gets a base hit. And, of course, that would be extraordinarily demeaning to God to think that he was involved in such things. But that would be like saying that God somehow personally intervened to facilitate that accomplishment. Now, God not only doesn't, I don't think he can.
Well, what happens when
he is Yahweh of the Shabbat, because as a seventh-dimensional construct, it is one of the three ways that he can intervene in our world, and it's the only way that he can intervene with those he does not know. With Yosha, he's just here for a very short period of time and has fairly limited power.
Very specific task.
Very specific tasks, very limited power, very short periods of time. With the set-apart spirit, you never see the set-apart spirit doing anything else away from her children. She is going to protect us. She's going to nurture us. She's going to enlighten us. But she is never used to do anything other than nurture, protect, enlighten, empower the covenant's children. So that means that the only way that God can interact with our world is through the Sabbath. The Sabbath are the Malach. It tells us the regimen that the Malach are orchestrated in, which is command and control. And just to emphasize this point, while Mickey and Minnie Mouse are not living beings, the concept of try to imagine Walt Disney, who is not self-existent. He's actually dead now. But imagine Walt Disney, who conceived the two-dimensional world of Mickey and Minnie Mouse, trying to enter the world of that two-dimensional world as a three-dimensional construct. Not only couldn't he do it, any attempt to do it would destroy the two-dimensional world.
He'd destroy the
seven
page
dimensions.
He was drawing.
Yeah, absolutely. So now imagine a seven-dimensional God, Yahweh, who with almost no effort on his part, some calculations and some words, spoke the universe into the six-dimensional universe into existence. Now him trying to enter our 3.5-dimensional realm here on Earth. And it's absolutely impossible. So he is Yahweh.
The closest he could get is the equivalent of Walt Disney drawing a two-dimensional picture of himself and having it interact with his characters.
That's correct.
That would be
and
what
he can put
was.
those little bubbles where the cartoon characters have words in the little bubbles.
Mm-hmm.
He can share words with us, and he did. The most effective way for a three-dimensional construct to interact with two dimensions, or 4 to interact with 3, or 7 to interact with 3.5, is with words.
Yeah.
The best way to do it. And that's how he represents himself. That's why we're reading all of this.
Yeah, and he uses implements. He uses that implement, the pen, and that's the whole thing. I mean, that's why Maseh means the work and implement of Yahweh.
Right.
I mean,
exactly. Yes, it does.
Because he has to be just diminished by billions of times or trillions of times to enter this realm. I mean, that's just the way it has to be.
That's what the Malach are. They're the instruments. They're the pen, the pencil, the paintbrush, the paints.
Right. From Yah's perspective, we are all his children. Like Kirk told me a story that over these, I think it was the Sunday of this past week, he had many, 7 or 8, 9 covenant members over to his home for dinner. He and Terry did. And just what an extraordinary experience it was to have that many covenant members all talking about important things and sharing the joy of being part of Yah's family together over a meal. So from God's perspective, we're family. But from the perspective of humanity looking at us, we're implements. We're not Malach, but we are the highest calling we can really have in terms of reaching humankind is to be an implement, to be used by Yah as a tool. Now, he's continuing the list of things that he... Right. Now, he's continuing the list of things he's against. And you're going to find in this list, in an English Bible, one of the things being listed as a cedar, one being listed as Lebanon, another is being listed as an oak, and the oak is of Bashan. And I would like to explain that God's not against cedars, he is not against Lebanon, and he is not against oaks, even if they are in Bashan. So this is what I think he said, looking at the words. And I will be upon and against the strong and established. That's from Aretz. I will be against the projection of power. I will be against those who erect large public, civic, and religious buildings. And I will be against Ha-Lebanon, those who whitewash and pave over. And I will be against the high, the overbearing, and the haughty. And I will be against the exalted and the honored, those who are lifted up, those who engage in forgiving, who are accepting, who are tolerant. And I will be against the mightiest, especially the religious worship of Allah as the greatest of the serpent, of Bashan, Alon Bashan. Now, while I wouldn't argue that Arez can be translated cedars, it can also be translated strong and established. What fits the list? Strong and established.
Yeah, God's against a certain type of tree, or God's against a certain type of people?
One of the things we have to know too is that the cedars were in Lebanon. That was their main tree, the cedar tree.
Correct. Right.
That's true too.
And,
I mean,
and by the way,
that's what they used to build their temples and their important buildings.
Yeah,
you know, so that's why it's there.
Right. Yes, and it's true that there was lots of religious worship under evergreen trees. There's a reason that the evergreen tree became the Christmas tree, because it was the sign of the renewal of life, and that it was brought in during the winter solstice when the days began growing longer. So is there an association with the tree with religion? Absolutely. No question about that. So the tree is symbolic not only of religion and general and religious worship, but very specifically the evergreen tree with the Christmas tree, and therefore with the religion of Christianity. So I am against all of the cedars, which serves as a symbol for these things, or you can say, and have it the verbiage now consistent with the rest, because there's 10, 12 things in this list. And the thing that is consistent with the rest of the list is, I am against the strong and established.
Yeah, that have exalted a bunch of nonsense in religion and exalting themselves over others, causing worship or submission.
Now, why
he's
why
against
is
those
he? Because
things,
you could say I'm against the cedars of Lebanon, which, by the way, there's almost no cedars in Lebanon anymore because they were all used. But so in the future, when he returns, him being against the cedars of Lebanon would be like saying, I'm against brontosauruses.
Yeah,
there aren't any brontosauruses
that's
left.
not what's being
there aren't
said.
any cedars
That's
of
not
Lebanon
the point.
left. So,
yeah,
I mean,
that's right.
So, all right. So he's against the strong and established who whitewash and pave over. Now, why would he be against? Lebanon means to whitewash. It's from Laban, to make white.
I can think of
their cheese over there looks like a white brick. You know that, right? I mean, it just looks like a white brick.
Yeah. But Lebanon, so what it means, you could translate it, I am against the strong and established who whitewash and pave over, which means you look at the religion of Christianity, it whitewashed and paved over Yahweh's truth. It put their lives right
literally
on
what the
top
term
of
means.
the truth. Right, exactly what the term means. And it could also be, I am against the established who wear white robes. Oh, boy.
That fits them as well.
Well, that fits the Pope, certainly does, doesn't it? Okay. So, and listen, there is no good in Lebanon now. I mean, Lebanon is going to be the home of Hezbollah. Hezbollah has routinely attacked Israel. Hezbollah is going to lead the Magog War. They'll be the first in. They're going to attack Israel even before the Magog War begins. Lebanon has gone from a rather sickening and mix of Christianity, the Phalange, and Sunni Islam, which then led to a horrible, murderous civil war where the Muslims said, we ain't going to share power. And now, because of the American invasion of Iraq and the empowerment of Iran and Shia Islam, Hezbollah now is wholly controlled by Shia Islam. So Hezbollah now runs Lebanon. So God would have every reason to be against Lebanon. But the cedars of Lebanon, there's no correlation between Hezbollah and cedars. So he's talking about
I don't think he's worried about cedar closets and so forth.
No.
I think he's clearly talking about the people that run
How
the
dare
show
you try and
there.
keep moths off your clothes?
That's right.
Yeah, then.
And I will be against the strong and established
clothes
who wear white robes and who pave over, and the high-minded, overbearing, and haughty, fits right in with the rest of the list, and the exalted and honored, all consistent with the rest of the list, and against, and this next word is alone. Alone carries the following connotations, and you can choose which ones you think apply. The first is oaks. I don't think God's got anything against the oak tree. Yes, I know that there were some places where religious ceremonies were under oak trees. But even Abraham met one time with Yahowah under an oak tree. God's got, he even uses the oak tree in a parable. He created him. He's got nothing against oak trees. So that's a really bad choice. So what are the other meanings of alone that fit? Well, alone means I am against the strong hand of idolatry. I'm against the promotion of false gods. I'm against the sites and symbols of the pagan religion, particularly pagan religious shrines. Alone is from Allah, which means larger and greater. It's Allah, of course, is Allah today, the God of Islam. And now if you realize that this is greater and it's Allah's name, this is Allahu Akbar. I am against Allahu Akbar, a terrorist chant of Muslims worldwide. And he says, and it is related to alul, which means to incite others to worship a false god based on someone having received a revelation from a deity whose message is worthless. I know that guy. I wrote a book about that guy. His name is Muhammad. Now it says, so this is Elon, and therefore, how about, I'm against the mightiest and especially the religious worship of Allah as the greatest. Now, this is of Bashan. What is Bashan? You know what the Hebrew word Bashan means? Serpent.
Is it? Yeah. Bashan would be serpent. Yeah.
So Allah is.
It's got to be share like
Allah
Bashar.
As the greatest of the serpent. In other words, Allah is Satan. But there's two other meanings of Bashan. When I say this a lot of times, that my tongue is firmly in my cheek when I say this, because it's just really a play on words. But God cheats. He created the language, and his metaphors walk on all fours. Bashan doesn't just mean that Allah is Satan. It also means the disgrace of the lowly and little.
That's
okay,
perfect.
So the religious worship
That's just too perfect.
Of the lowly and little. Well, we're back to a fellow named Paul and his writing of the Christian New Testament. I am opposed to the religious worship and disgraceful religious worship of the lowly and little. Well, then it adds another bit. Who tramples underfoot. Now, I'm here to tell you that trampling underfoot is just such an interesting phrase. And there's one place where God specifically says that this menace is the greatest menace to his creation of all time. And the thing that he accuses them of is trampling the entire world underfoot. So with Bashan meaning to trample underfoot, I am want to make that connection. Do you know who God says tramples the whole world underfoot?
The Romans.
An evolution of imperial Rome. No, an evolution of imperial Rome. The Roman Catholic Church. Yeah.
Okay.
The Yahowah speaks of imperial Rome as vicious, and they were. He speaks of that which grew out of imperial Rome, the Roman Catholic Church, as treading the whole world underfoot. This is a direct reference to the Roman Catholic Church, and he's not done referring to them. Now, is it a obvious reference? No. Nor is the next one, which follows. But does God want an obvious reference for him to say, in Hebrew, I despise the Roman Catholic Church? And
well, he writes
told us
entire books about it, so I think it's pretty clear. So without saying Catholic,
you've got to read it. You got to read it. You got to think about it. You got to make the connections, right?
You got to chew the cud.
You got to chew the cud. Absolutely. So that's a really interesting statement when it's worship of Allah as the greatest of the serpent, as the religious worship which is disgraceful of the lowly and little, and of the one who tramples underfoot, which would be the Roman Catholic Church. And I will be against all of the elevated positions which have sought or ascribed high status for themselves, and against all of the, and now this next word is Gibba. I've had no problem with every word so far finding that there was, that as part of the world's definition, there was a definition that fit this litany of things that God is against, which is really all the arrogance of humankind and human elitists and those that are in positions of power. Every bit of it has been that way. Until we get to Gibeah, I am against the hills. The word is used 69 times. And Gibeah,
the root that came to mind to me right away is Gabon. Which there was a group of people he wanted cleared off the land, and what it meant was evil and idolatrous hill. So I think it ties
Gibeah,
right in here.
Yeah, Gibeah, which means hilltop, hills. A variation of it appears 69 times. But Gibeah, used in this form, appears exactly 7 times. And it appears 7 times because if you make the connection, you need to find a place of 7 hills that God would be against, that treads the whole world underfoot.
It's a good point.
By the way, that was what came to my mind as soon as you started talking about hills, was Rome being the city of 7 hills.
And then to find this form
it
of
fits
Gibeah
both
is
those
exactly
definitions
7 times.
because as Gabon, it's full of idolatry. It's the city of 7 hills full of idolatry.
Right.
That's what
Judges
it is.
7:1, 1 Samuel 23:19, 1 Samuel 26:1, 1 Samuel 26:3, 2 Samuel 2:24, Yashayah 10:32, and Yirmiyah 31:39. Now, what's interesting here is all of these are books that are specifically designed to expose and condemn religion.
And it's also a town of Benjamin. And who was from Benjamin?
Yeah, it's a town of Benjamin and a Philistine outpost. So it's the hills, of which this word is used 7 times, which are exalted and honored, which, there are some places that you could extrapolate here before we get to the use of 7. What is it? Is in Rome, Imperial Rome, where was the seat of government?
Capitol Hill.
Capitoline Hill. And in the United States, we actually use the same Roman term, don't we?
Gee, I wonder why.
We call it Capitol Hill.
Yep.
Where we, too, have a Senate. And so, and even this reference to Allah, Mecca is surrounded by hills. But 7 and hills and exalted and honored hills. If you were to say which hills are the most honored and exalted in the world, it'd be the 7 hills of Rome, and there'd be no argument from anybody on that. So let's just read what is found in Revelation. And, we don't go to Revelation very often because we can't verify its trustworthiness. And it's written in Greek. But, I think that what we read in Revelation that is consistent with what we read elsewhere, and particularly since much of Revelation is a paraphrase and an explanation of Daniel, then those portions of it can be trusted. So here, this is what it says.
Makes sense.
And one of the 7 messengers, who has 7 bowls, speaking of 7 judgments, came and spoke with me, the disciple Yahowah, saying, "Come here, and I will show you the judgment, the verdict, the condemnation, and the separation of the great whore who sits on many waters." Now, 2 things are important here. This is judgment, verdict, condemnation, separation. What have we been reading about? God said, I'm against, I'm going to diminish, I'm going to destroy. So we're talking about exactly the same moment in time. The whore who sits on many waters, Gentiles, and with whom the rulers of the earth commit immoral acts. Okay? Roman Catholicism was probably the single most immoral and universal criminal force in human history. With whom the rulers of the earth. And by the way, it says rulers of the earth. when the U.S. Congress decided they were going to have the Pope speak to a joint session of Congress because of the outgoing Speaker of the House?
It's disgusting.
That's consulting with the leaders of the earth. Obama met him at the airport, took him to the White House.
Oh, no, they all do. All do.
Yeah, he goes and meets with heads of states around the world.
I've seen Putin kiss his ring. I saw a picture of that. Putin kissing his ring. I mean, they're all out there doing that. You know,
so he's the only one that you could say whom the rulers of the earth commit immoral acts, and those who dwell on the earth were intoxicated by the wine of her immortality, her immorality, which would be the religious worship of false gods. Her being a reference to the church.
You know what's interesting? We were looking at some coins today, and the biggest family that really started mass producing coins was the Piso family. Okay, and by the way, all four figures that are on Mount Rushmore are direct descendants of the Piso family. It's kind of interesting. And I was looking at the coin, and it's a person riding a winged horse, and on that side it says Cristo. Ready for that? And then you turn it over, and you have the god Apollos.
Wow.
Apollos.
Wow.
No kidding.
Wow.
Yeah, I love honesty.
Yeah, it's really.
Isn't that kind of mind blowing?
When you look at Apollo and Paulos. Yeah, I've never even thought about that connection, but that is pretty mind blowing.
Well, no, that's actually what happened was he went over to see a Cyprian king named Apollos. They have the
that's correct.
Cypria, and when he left there, his name was now Paulos. Yeah. That came from Apollos. Paulos. Yeah. Even though it has he is lowly and little is the meaning, obviously, but still, it's pretty wild. We're actually, I mean, all these confirmations are everywhere in Torah. They're unreal. The accuracy of things. There's one we're working on now where Elam, they ended up in Iran. Actually, he ended up in Iran. He really did. And he talks about these places in the upper hills he lives, and we got pictures of them. They look like caves. And guess there's a mountain called something Ra right there. And the interesting thing about this Ra mountain, which is very odd looking, it almost looks like a just almost straight up, like a Washington Monument type thing or something, on the top of this mountain. And it's the closest thing to the sun nearest the equator in all of Iran. It's just wild.
Wow.
It's just
there's reasons
wild.
that Esau was not favored. So anyway, 17.
And guess what? In that region, guess what their regional dish is there? Lentil soup.
Oh, great.
Oh yeah. I mean, this is right there.
So
it's amazing.
Here is 3 and 4 of 17th chapter of Revelation. And he carried me away into the wilderness in spirit. By the way, he had, therefore, Yahuwah's entire experience as he was seeing future history had to be in spirit. Otherwise, he could not have gone forward in time and reported back in time. And he carried me away into a wilderness in spirit, and I saw a woman sitting on a crimson beast. So, beast is Babylon to Persia to Alexander's Macedonian Empire to Imperial Rome to the Roman Catholic Church. Those are the 5 beasts. So this woman was sitting on a crimson beast. It has to be one of those 5 beasts, full of foreign and abusive, scurrilous and slanderous, injurious and reviling, improper and blasphemous names. So which one of those 5 beasts has improper and blasphemous names? You can make an argument. You can make an argument for all 5. which is the
Yeah,
which is the one that is operative in the last days when this is occurring?
Allah.
Well, Allah is not one of the five.
Well, Lord.
The five are Babylon,
Lord.
which would be Bel. Bel would be
Rome.
the god Lord.
It'd be Rome.
Yeah, Roman Catholicism, because Imperial Rome's long gone.
Right.
So there's only one of the five that is active in the last days, and she happens to be the one with the most blasphemous names. Mary, Queen of Heaven, Mother of God, for example. Jesus. God on a stick, as I like to say of Roman Catholicism. It's that's their God. We're going to put God on a stick.
Well, they can not only kill their God, they can demote him because he's in third place now.
Yeah, it's like the Jeff Dunham character of the jalapeno on a stick. That's Roman Catholicism. They beat him to the character. They have God on a stick. And he carried me away to a wilderness in spirit, where I saw a woman sitting on a crimson dyed. This is the dyed red beast. So it's one of those five beasts, full of foreign and abusive, scurrilous and scandalous, blasphemous names. The Lord God, Jesus Christ, Allah, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Well, the 7 heads and 10 horns is a direct reference to Daniel's prophecy concerning the beast that grows out of imperial Rome to trample the entire earth. In other words, the Roman Catholic Church. And the woman was clothed in purple and scarlet, the colors of royalty and death, adorned with gold and precious jewels, pearls, having in her hand a gold cup full of abominations, abhorrent, detestable, religious concoctions, and of the unclean things of her immoral acts, which would be religious worship. Upon her forehead a name was written, Mystery Babylon. Myths and religious secrets confided upon the initiates of Babylon, the gateway to the gods from Babel, confusion and corruption, basis of the word Bible. Upon her forehead was written, Mystery Babylon, the Great, the mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth. Now, I just said the only operative one of the 5 beasts was the Roman Catholic Church, and here's God himself contradicting me and saying, no, it's Mystery Babylon. Or is he contradicting me? Or am I contradicting
they're
him?
one and the same.
No, because the Catholic Church is the religion that most closely mirrors Babylon with the Trinity and all this.
Yeah. Well, America is the nation that most closely mirrors imperial Rome. The entity that most closely mirrors Babylon is the Roman Catholic Church.
You know, it's interesting too when you just looking at the colors. When you went to the Bath to the home, you had red, and you had magenta or purple, and you had blue, and it was outlined in gold. Notice they have all these colors. You know, when red and blue are combined, they make purple. That's the whole royal thing. And that's what they're doing. Everything is a counterfeit, even the colors. I mean, it's amazing, really.
Right. Correct. So the reason this is Mystery Babylon is because that is the reason that God began with Babylon and said out of Babylon evolved Persia, evolved the realm of Macedonian world conquest, evolved imperial Rome and their viciousness, evolved the Roman Catholic Church. That the Roman Catholic Church is Mystery Babylon, is the great corrupter, is the progenitor of the Bible, is the great harlot, the mother of harlots, the source of
abomination. It's the very power seat of Ha-Satan. And
correct.
The truth of the matter
if you look at
is
it, let's just look at some of these things. Roman Catholicism, first of all, do they have a Trinity?
Yes.
Yes.
Sure they do.
Did Babylon have a Trinity?
Yes, it did.
Yes. Does Roman Catholicism feature a Queen of Heaven and Mother of God?
Absolutely.
Yep.
How about a Madonna and Child?
Yep.
Big old check mark.
Do they have as their preeminent festival Easter?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Do they serve ham and hot cross buns?
Yes, they do.
Yep.
Do they have a time called Lent that's 40 days
do.
of weeping prior to their great religious festival?
Because Tammuz lived 40 years before he was killed by that wild boar that they were going to get back at and eat on Easter. Yep, that's right.
Do they celebrate it on the Sunday closest to the
vernal equinox?
Spring equinox? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Do they claim that the Son of God was born at the winter solstice?
Yep, they sure do.
Indeed.
They sure do, huh? And they have Mass too, don't they? They invented the Mass. Yeah. Boy,
we don't have to guess this stuff, Yahowah talks about, as it was in the beginning, so it'll be in the end. And it's
by
not.
the way,
And
don't they claim that all of their authority comes from a book called the Bible?
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think?
And all that.
Yeah. That,
named after a sun goddess.
Right.
And by the way, that's Holy
Hebrew,
Bible.
And it would be Babel. Babel and Bible is the same word.
Yeah, and by the way, holy is diseased, right? Diseased.
Right. Yeah.
And so you got a diseased book of Bel, and you're
correct.
They're running around thumping it as though these are the words.
What day of the week did the Babylonians worship?
That would be Sunday.
Right. Did they have holy water?
Yes, they did.
Yes.
Yeah, they did.
They had priests.
You can go right down. They had priests too, didn't they?
Yep.
They had nuns.
Holy buildings, veneration.
Oh yeah, worship.
Weren't their
bowing
priests
down.
referred to as Father as well?
Absolutely. Correct. Yeah, Babylon today is the Roman Catholic Church.
No, there's no question about it.
But God is going to make it absolutely clear even further on here. He says, "And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the set apart, and with the blood of the witnesses of Yahusha. And when I saw her, I was astonished and amazed, marveling and wondering. So the spiritual messenger said to me, 'For what reason are you amazed? Why are you surprised? Why are you bewildered?'" Quite honestly, I like this approach. And when we hear a spiritual messenger say something, remember, they are an implement. God speaks through them. So this is God saying, "Why are you amazed? Why don't you get it? Why are you bewildered by this, Yahukanan? You shouldn't be. We're not. We understand who she is. We understand what she wants. We wouldn't be the least bit bewildered by this." And so one of the things I like about God, when his children don't get it, he's not the kind that just goes up, "Hey, okay, I know you're stupid. I know you can't figure this stuff out, so I'm going to use real simple words. I'm going to talk really slowly. I'm going to draw you a picture so you understand." No, he says, "What in the hell's wrong with you? Why don't you get this?" When he was talking to Nicodemus, did he say, "Oh, all you need to do is believe and it's all going to be just swell"? No, he says, "What's wrong with you? Why don't you get it? You study the Torah for crying out loud." When he ran into the two guys from Emmaus, on the road to Emmaus, that had left town after the fulfillment of Pesach and Matzah, and they don't recognize him, he says, "What in the world is wrong with you? Why can't you figure this out?" And so the very fact that God calls them out in this way says that he has a degree of respect for us that we don't seem to live up to. I like, because if he said, "Hey, listen, I get it. I understand. I wasn't clear enough in my communication. I didn't say this. I only said this 500 times. I didn't say it 1,000 times. So I get why you're confused. No, if he said that, he would be saying, okay, you're really stupid. But he doesn't say that. He just says, why are you astonished? Why didn't you figure this out? I just like that because it actually gives us more credit than sometimes I think we deserve. So when I saw her, I was astonished and marveled. So the spiritual messenger said, what reason are you amazed? Why are you surprised? And, by the way, the question
he already
was
told
asked,
you this was going to happen. Go look at Isaiah.
I've read Daniel. Didn't he tell us this was going to happen in Daniel? I mean, all you got to do is read Daniel. It's right there. I will explain to you the religious myths and mysteries, the doctrines of the woman, and of the beast that supports, tolerates, and carries her, which is the 7 heads and the 10 horns. But you want to know about the nature of this whore? Read the 6th proverb. Read the 7th proverb. Read the 8th proverb. It tells you all about who the whore is. This is not hard to figure out. So the answer, Yahweh speaking through the Malach, let me explain to you the religious myths and the mysterious doctrine of the woman and of the beast that supports, tolerates, and carries her. So the woman is the adulterous whore of Babylon, of religion, who is supported by the beast, and the beast is the Roman Catholic Church. Let me tell you about the religion of the Roman Catholic Church, he says. The beast that you saw was and is not, and is about to come up out of the abyss, which would be Sheol, is what he said when he talked in Hebrew, and to be cut off and go into total separation. And those whose name has not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, those who are not engaged in the covenant, who dwell on the earth will be awestruck and astonished, amazed and surprised when they see the beast, that he was and is not and will come. All right, so this is really interesting here, and I want to share it from what I wrote as opposed to trying to cover all this from memory, because there's a lot to this, and I wouldn't be surprised if we go over it more than just once. He says, okay, let's think this through. This encounter between Yahuwah and the spiritual messenger occurred sometime in 66 CE, which means that the demonic spirit which had possessed Paul, by his own admission 3 decades earlier, prior to this revelation, in 36 CE, had just returned to the abyss following Paul's death earlier this same year. That's profound.
I think.
This explains the was and is not reference. I mean, I can go through, and we will take a moment to talk about the emperors of Rome, and that is an interesting reality. But first and foremost, this encounter took place in 66 CE, which means that the demonic spirit that possessed Paul by his own admission in 36 CE, we can date that time, had just returned to the abyss following Paul's death earlier this same year. And boy, would Yahuwah know about that, because who was Paul's primary enemy, or should we call him Apollos' primary enemy? Yahuwah. Yeah, he started off attacking as his primary enemy Shimon Kephesh. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But
then it became
he quickly turned to, if you read his last letters, all of his last letters focus on a singular enemy, Yahuwah in Ephesus. That's where he is. He would have known about his death because he was his foremost adversary.
Yeah, he even told him that they'd been baptized in the wrong spirit. Yahuwah had done that.
Oh, of course, yeah. I had to be baptized
wild.
again. He's talking to his lover boy, Timothy, about all this. Yeah. Because Paul is wimpy and helpless and cuddling up to where? Where is Paul? Living in a house in Rome. Yep. This explains the was and was not reference. Paul was Yahuwah's most nefarious foe. as is noted in Paul's letters to Timothy and Yosha's statements regarding Ephesus, which is exactly where Yahuwah has just come from, and where Paul was overtly critical in his letters and in his speeches of Yahuwah. The same demon, however, would emerge to possess. Remember, I've got my hierarchy of people that whose trials I want to attend because I despise them more than anyone else in human history. And I've got my top 5. My number 1, overwhelming number 1, is Paul, the person he's being talked about here. My number 2, you might think would be Muhammad, who is possessed by this same spirit later. But my number 2 is actually not Muhammad. It's Hadrian.
Yeah.
Hadrian.
And I think I share that with God. I think God's second most despised individual, who, by the way, was also a homosexual, who was that only matters because of the fact that we are told that this specific demon who's going to possess the Torahless one on the last days is going to possess a man who is a homosexual, and we know that Paul was a homosexual. So,
it's indicative of the spirit that is possessing
it's
them,
the attitude, the love of man, the attitude, the love of man is indicative. Everyone who's listened to this program knows I've got nothing against homosexuality. You want to be a homosexual, that is your affair. I do not care. I do not like it being promoted as normal. And it is, there are the 3 people that God's going to hate the most. Paul, Hadrian, and the Torahless one, known as the Antichrist, the last day, are all homosexual.
It's kind of interesting
by the way,
here.
Homosexuality is promoted as part of political correctness.
Well,
Socialistic
sure it
humanism.
is. Sure it is. They went from.
And there's a lot of evidence that Muhammad leaned that way as well.
Oh, of course, yeah. He even talks about it. He says one of the things that's going to happen in paradise is that you're going to have boy virgins also satiating the desires of the martyrs, and there will be no shame associated with the boys who will be sex objects. Yeah. So Muhammad obviously lusted for the little boys too. Yep, that is true. So there's a commonality in that, and I think part of it is that Yahweh loves women, and His covenant was conceived through a woman.
Well, and
every
also,
important names in Yahweh's vocabulary are feminine. Yahweh's name is feminine.
Yeah, but Satan attacks through a feminine ruach most often, whether
Correct.
it's Biblia, whether it's holy, whether it's the grace, whether it's fides or faith.
Because he's a counterfeit.
And so he has to counterfeit the ruach, and he has to use feminine ruachs to really destroy men because he thinks it's so funny. I think. I mean, you know.
Okay, so the same demon would emerge to possess Hadrian just 6 decades later, when he destroyed Jerusalem, renaming it after himself while erecting a shrine to deify himself on the Temple Mount, all occurring between 126 and 136 CE. The most vile of satanic messengers would then possess Muhammad in 610 CE, creating Islam. But that will not be the last we will see of this satanic envoy. The dark spirit who possessed Paul, Hadrian, and Muhammad will return to possess the Torahless one, more commonly known as the Antichrist. And, we did a program not too long ago where I said, I cannot tell you for certain. My instinct tells me that the Torahless one's first name will be Paul. And since this demon is the living embodiment of religion and politics, those who do not know God will be scratching their heads befuddled as to why the Antichrist will have so much in common with the individuals they have been beguiled into revering. You know that Hadrian is considered amongst the top 2 or 3 most successful emperors in Roman history. And, of course, Muhammad's name means praised one, and there is no person on earth who is esteemed by more people than Paul. So this whole thing has been against arrogant people who have assumed positions of power. Nobody has been more effective at seizing power and being considered as esteemed, lifted up, as Paul, Hadrian, and Muhammad. They are the prototypes for the Torahless one who's on our horizon.
Yeah, speaking of prototypes, I just want to bring this up. Alexander, his dad was Philip of Macedonia, actually.
Correct. Right.
And that particular bloodline, if you go all the way back to the progenitor being Philip, you would be astounded how many of them are royals and how many of them have been presidents. I am not kidding you. It is astonishing. Hillary Clinton even gets traced back to that. It is amazing.
Wow.
It is astounding. And one of the things that Lisa's big on is, she does 40 hours, 50 hours of she'll listen to these incredibly long intellectual studies. I mean, I couldn't listen to them if I had to, from academics, to find two things out. And then she'll connect them with the Torah. One of the things that Yahweh talks about is so as it was in the beginning, so it's going to be in the end. Just like before the days of the flood, how terrible it's going to get with people's, activities and so forth, and the way, this base level that they end up going to. It's the same thing with almost everything. Like Mystery Babylon becomes the Roman Catholic Church, who's right there at the end. Running the whorehouse.
Yeah, it starts full circle. But, the full circle is also, we start with Eden, we end with Eden. Positive side, we start with Eden and end with Eden.
Well, Babylon,
and we end with Babylon. And we end with Babylon.
Yeah.
Okay. So
right.
Here is the mind which has wisdom. Okay, folks. You want to make the connections. Here's how you do it. The 7 heads are 7 hills on which the woman sits. Okay, so now the woman called Mystery Babylon. Babylon is all things evil related to religion, confusion, and corruption. She sits on 7 hills. She is the Roman Catholic Church. Rome is irrefutably the city on 7 hills, identifying Roman Catholicism as the power against which God is in opposition. 5 of the 7 hills, Aventine, Caline, Esquiline, Quirinal, and Viminal, are festooned with religious, political, and religious and political monuments. And of the other two, the Capitoline Hill became the basis for Capitol Hill and represents political power, and Palatine Hill, which has been translated palace, symbolizes royal authority. This is bad for the Roman Catholic Church. Palatine is the centermost hill in Rome and overlooks the Colosseum, which would be military interest, while standing 40 meters above the Roman Forum, economic interest, on one side of the Circus Maximus, which was religious interest, on the other. Palatine Hill was the mystical site of the cave of Romulus and Remus, the temple of Apollo, the palace of Augustus, Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, and Nero, and later Vespasian and Titus, who destroyed the temple. And there are 7 rulers. 5 have fallen. 1 is. The other has not yet come. And when he comes, he must remain for a little while. Well, here's that accounting. It refers directly to the 5 imperial Roman rulers who had fallen. They were, first Roman imperial ruler, Julius, deceased 44 BCE. Yeah, Augustus, deceased 14 CE. Tiberius, deceased 37 CE. Caligula. Oh, there's a charmer. Deceased, 41 CE. And Claudius, deceased, 54 CE. By the way, Claudius was probably worse than Caligula. The first pope, of course, was Augustus. Those are the 5. How many did he say there would be? There are 7 rulers, 5 have fallen. Julius, Augustus, Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, 5. The imperial Roman ruler still alive at the time of the revelation is
Nero.
Nero.
Died in 68 CE. Galba, Ortho, and Vitellius were all killed in 69. So we can skip over them and look to Vespasian, 69 to 79 CE, as the one who had not yet come and would remain for a little while. And while he would, and while he did come, and under his leadership, 3 Roman leaders invaded Yehuda and then destroyed Yahweh's temple, his son Titus would haul the treasure away, using it to finance the Roman Colosseum, the ultimate shrine to man's immoral fascination with war, with conquest, with killing, and with religion. The revolt against Roman taxation, which initiated the invasion, commenced in 66 CE, when Rome plundered Yahweh's temple. Same year this was written. Then later that same year, the revelation to Yahuwah was composed, and Vespasian brought the blunt force of the legion called Flumenta, which means lightning bolts, the 12th against Yehuda. So God's very specific here. This is not hard to figure out. The imperial beast of Imperial Rome, morphed into the Roman Catholic Church, which sits on the city of 7 hills. And the beast which was and is not is himself also an 8th and is one of the 7, and he goes to destruction. Well, since the beast is a reference to one of Satan's demons and its influence over political and religious doctrine, the one who was and is not depicts the demon which had until just recently, from Yahuwah's perspective, possessed Paul. And since it was also an 8th, this is a reference to the demonic spirit who would later possess Hadrian, Muhammad, and ultimately the Torahless one, then going to destruction upon Yahweh's returns, circa year 6000 Yah. The reason that this demon is mentioned as one of the 7 is because Hadrian and the Torahless one represent the beasts of Imperial Rome, which evolved into Roman Catholicism. This is the essence of Mystery Babylon. Now, if some of the terminology is a bit confusing, I suggest turning, to where we've been in the past, which is the 7th volume of Yada Yahweh, where Daniel's revelations regarding how the beast of Roman Catholicism grew out of Imperial Rome, having previously evolved from Greece, Persia, and Babylon over a 1,000-year period from 539 BCE to 395 CE, to become Roman Catholicism during the reign of Theodosius. Theodosius was the last emperor to rule over Eastern and Western Rome, the last one. And he was the first Caesar to impose the Roman Catholic Church on the entire Roman Empire. Anyone who does a study of what happened under Theodosius will come to the conclusion that there wasn't even a nanosecond between the end of Imperial Rome and the beginning of Roman Catholicism. One grew immediately and directly out of the other. The final evolution of evil from the imposition of the Roman Catholic Church to the political power manifest by the Torahless one is explained using the same terminology and presented to Daniel between his arrival in Babylon in 605 BC and the empire's destruction in 539 BC. It was, as is what follows, addressing the period from 2026 to 2033 CE. And the 10 horns which you saw are 10 rulers who have not yet received a kingdom, but they will receive authority as rulers with the beast for 1 hour. These have one purpose, and they give their power and authority to the beast. They will wage war against the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them. And he said to me, the waters which you saw, where the whore sits, are the multitude of Gentiles of different nations and languages. And the 10 horns which you saw, and the beast, these will hate the whore, and will make her desolate and naked, and will eat her flesh, and will burn her up with fire. That's now we're at the 16th verse. One thing that you can count on when it comes to Satan, no matter the guys or the devil's minions, is that they're all in it for themselves, and they will turn on one another. And the woman whom you saw is the great city, which reigns over the rulers of the earth, Rome. Since Rome itself doesn't rule over kings, and since the Vatican has limited political influence, the city which reigns over the earth rulers is Babylon, and the city of Babylonia, which is now manifest through Roman Catholicism. It's ironic that Christians seldom consider the implications of these words. After these things, I saw another messenger coming down from heaven, having great authority, and the earth was illumined with his glory. And he cried out with a mighty voice, saying, Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. Now, this is the thing that most people, particularly Christians, don't want to think about. This means that the religious legacy of Babel is alive and well today.
Continues
and
on
that it's going to
very
grow
end.
up. Yeah, it's going to continue to the very end. And it will terminate Satan's confusing and corrupting influence when it's over.
Can I mention something here?
Yeah.
Can I mention something?
Uh-huh.
Look, I think that the reason, it's not that they don't want to admit it's there. I think they do admit it's there. But what they think is that Babylon was this place. They don't see it as a place of religion. They don't realize it was a religious place. They really don't. I think that they view Babylon as a sort of like a Sodom and Gomorrah type of place, where there was, and it may have been.
They're ignorant.
Right.
Well, yeah, they're totally ignorant, but I mean, they probably look at Babylon as those people are out at the bar or something like that. I just wanted to throw that in.
I don't think they have any clue. Any clue what Babylon represents, or the fact that Babylon permeates their religion, even the name for their holy book. I don't think they seem incapable of making that connection because of the 2.4 billion Christians that are on the planet today.
Yeah, and now, as
2 billion of
out,
them are Roman Catholics.
It's melded with secular humanism. I mean, they're almost one and the same. Accepting everything, loving everybody, all this.
Of the religions are
and he's even trying
together.
to meld it in with Islam.
Yeah, sure.
Islam.
Sure.
Right. Yeah, and it says, and she has become a dwelling place of demons and a prison for every unclean spirit, a prison of every unclean and hated bird of prey. For all of the Gentile nations have drunk of the wine of the passion of her immorality, and the rulers of the earth have committed acts of idolatry with her, and the merchants of the earth have become rich by the wealth of her sensuality. There's only one institution alive in the last days who has had this influence over the millennium, the Roman Catholic Church. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that you may not participate in her sins, and that you may not receive of her plagues. Oh boy, who's the plague of death?
Yeah.
Paul. Yeah. What's the legacy of Paul, the Roman Catholic Church? What's Paul's most famous letter?
To Daniel.
What letter is the actual foundation of Christianity?
Probably Romans.
Galatians was the first.
Yeah,
there isn't a Christian on the planet who has studied Paul's letters who doesn't recognize that the centerpiece, the fulcrum of Paul's writings is Romans. That is where Christianity is laid out.
Well, you went to Daniel a moment ago. I just want to point out that they say the beast grows out of a horn that's lowly and little, which is what Paulos means. I mean, we've all been there before, but I want anybody who hasn't heard that needs to know that's in there. I mean, it's right there.
Correct.
He'll be a Pauline Christian, period.
Right.
The beast will
come
be a
out
Pauline
of her, my
Christian.
people. What does that mean? I mean, come out of her, my people means that people are still influenced.
Stop participating
even in the very last days. Yeah, by Christianity. But, I think there's more to it than that. If you look at
because
rabbinic,
Babylon entails all religion.
Right. Yeah, you look at rabbinic Judaism. Rabbinic Judaism is hugely influenced by the period where the Greeks ruled over Israel. Hugely influenced by it. And the Greeks were simply a manifestation of Babylon.
I think you told me that's where they got the yarmulke from, wasn't it?
Right.
The Greeks.
Absolutely. It's when they got they wore the same solar disc on their heads.
The cardinals wear that same thing.
Right. And their infinity became not a 7 candle menorah, but a 9. And what is the beginning of the rabbinical year?
That would be the 7th month. They call Rosh Hashanah, Towrah, which has nothing to do with Rosh Hashanah.
And where do they pick up the Rosh Hashanah?
Babylon.
The first month of the year, Babylon.
Because they go into the temple of Marduk and see if their book their name was in the book of life. Yeah. Correct.
Right. And so, rabbinic Judaism and Kabbalah are intertwined today, and Kabbalah is a regurgitation of the Babylonian religion. So I heard another verse, come out of my people that you might not participate in her sins, you might not receive her plagues, for her sins have piled up as high as heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. We're talking about a single institution here. And if you tie the beast together, the 7 hills together, God's condemnation of Rome, and then what grew out of Rome, and as you said, the lowly and little horn, you've only got one entity in the world that fits this. The Roman Catholic Church, which not just represents half of Christendom today at 1.2 billion people, but the entirety of Christendom, because it all grew out of Roman Catholicism.
That all grew out of the same thing, and they all preach Paul in their little religious institutions.
All have Easter, all have.
But I'm kind of confused here. In that, not that I'm confused that this is a total representation of the Catholic Church. It clearly is, and I mean a person has to put blinders on not to see it.
Correct.
But my thing here is that I always looked at the beast as one guy. I understand it's a beastly system. It's
a beastly system.
But you feel like the Torahless one is separate from the beast, then?
Yeah, mother.
So the Torahless one is separate. Okay. All right.
Yeah, the Torahless one is a manifestation, is possessed by the beast. But
that's his lover's house.
Babylon is the Roman Catholic Church, and this particular beast is Roman Catholicism. It's not limited to Roman Catholicism. There are other evils that prevail in the world.
Yeah, so the Torahless one is also the beast, just like Alexander was the goat. Yeah. Yeah,
the Torahless one is both possessed by the beast, the representative of Satan, the demon from Satan, but is also a beast in and of himself because of his demon possession and his Torahless one position. I think you could make the case that Paul is not just possessed by this beast, but is a beast, and that he's the plague of death as that beast, but if you're
and that word shouldn't be
institution,
forgotten either, because he did call him the plague of death, and it says so you don't receive her plagues. I mean, that's pretty clear right there too.
That's pretty couldn't be any more clear as it turns out. But the center of this is God's overall animosity to Christianity. That's what this is. This is a complete wholesale rebuke of Christianity. Sure, the Roman Catholic Church is the center of it, but that's the center of Christianity. And why would God be so anti-Christianity? Why is he talking about come out of Christianity?
Well, I mean, because there's not a chance. If you look at things through the Christian prism, there's not a chance you'll ever know Yahweh.
Correct.
Because you're going to rely on yourself.
What institution has caused more souls to die separated from God than any other institution in human history?
Christianity.
The Roman Catholic Church.
Roman Catholic Church and Christianity. And so because it is there have been 5 billion souls, at least 5 billion souls, who have succumbed to Roman Catholicism and Christianity over this period of time, and because Christianity is based on whitewashing Yahweh's message and claiming to speak for God, who they lead people away from, there is no institution on earth that God hates more. Now, it's not to say he didn't hate him very well. He did.
People from him. They taught their mothers taught their children how to die. I mean, that's
not to say he doesn't
happening.
hate Babylon. Not to say he doesn't hate these other beasts. It's kind of like me saying my least favorite important of these dates from my perspective is Yom Kippurim. Well, still among the 7 most important days of the year to me and the 7 most important days of all time to me. It's just that my priorities of those 7 put it as down the list a bit. But from Yahweh's point of view, it is the most important. Well, to say that the Roman Catholic Church is God's most hated institution for what they have done, they aren't the only one.
Yeah, it doesn't let everyone off lightly.
No, because at the beginning, he really was condemning socialist secular humanism. And
even if you talk in
militarism.
terms of... Yeah, but even if you talk in terms of the Roman Catholic Church, and as you rightly do, you lump Christianity into it as an example.
Correct.
I've seen many cases where people, I want to know the truth. I want to know the truth. You can ask anybody an unpopular truth that has shared the truth. They all want to know the truth. And then they start out, okay, so Yeshua is his name. No, it's not Yeshua. It's Yahusha, and it means Yahweh saves because this is a diminished manifestation of Yahweh, and on and on. And they still want to try to end up at the foot of that piece of wood. I'm telling you.
Right, they do.
They think they can just insert a name, and that changes everything.
Right back to God on a stick. You know, Jose the jalapeno is the jalapeno on a stick. It's right back to God on a stick.
I'm hearing you, Jose. I hear that.
Man.
You know.
Yeah, God on a stick.
It's the way it's going to be.
God on a stick.
I know, and you'd have to get them. They don't even understand what a Moed Mikre is. I mean, they don't know, and then they've got to go through all this learning, and then that's where it stops in most cases. You understand? Because I'm sure you know that most people just don't want to pay attention that long.
Yeah.
They want the answer in 5 seconds. You've said it yourself.
Yeah, I was reading a political report from the New York Times about Jared Kushner, who is probably the second most powerful person on earth today. He is the closest confidant of one Donald Trump, because he married Donald Trump's daughter and because his father was a gazillionaire. And
you're talking about the Jewish fellow.
Yeah, whose father was thrown in prison by Christie, which is why Christie is no longer part of the Trump team. And he was thrown in prison for trying to blackmail his brother into providing false testimony by spending $10,000 on a prostitute and recording equipment for a hotel room, and then sending the recording to his wife.
This is how business is done, isn't it?
Yeah, and of course the wife turned the tape over to the FBI, who promptly arranged for Kushner Sr. to be a guest of the feds for a while. But they were talking about him, and they kept on saying that he observes the Jewish holidays. And you go, oh my God!
Yeah, we can't pull him off of it. I know that. It's just like trying to change. Okay, I've got the name Yosha. Now, what does that mean? How do you say it? And okay, so what? Do you even believe in God? I've had people. I spend 3 days sharing information with them, and then they say, "No, I don't understand." Now, do you believe in God?
And my answer to that question is always
no. I don't.
I
don't believe in anything. I know.
Is always no. No, I don't. I do not believe in God.
Yeah, I know that. That's the pat answer right off. I know that.
Yes, I know Yahweh. I do not believe in God.
That's like saying, do you believe you're married to Yalda Kuhi? What difference does it make what I believe? I'm married to her. What do you mean by this? I mean, that's just stupid. Yeah. And it's once you've been through this plethora of prophecies, and as far as I'm concerned, one of the most amazing prophecies is the Yahowah prophecy. I'm serious about this.
Yeah, it's my favorite.
If anybody can look at that, and I'm not saying just exposing Paul, and even naming him by name, and how it ends up in front of a piece of wood saying they're all going to be resurrected. If there was, because you have 40,000 flavors of Christianity or whatever, they all end up there in front of that piece of wood. That's the answer to everything right there. It's not understanding. It's not, it's none of these things. It's nothing real. It's just, they can't get over the fact that Yahweh's not a religious deity, and to your credit, Christianity is just watered down Catholicism. That's all it's ever going to be, folks. That's it. It's nothing special.
No, it's slightly watered down Roman Catholicism, and very, very slightly watered down. It took the same Bible. It took the same Lord title. It took the same Jesus misnomer. It took the same religious corruptions all the way through. The same churches.
Same institution called a church.
It is a pagan goddess. God doesn't have a church.
Well,
and
it's just like you take the Seventh-day Advent. Congratulations, you recognize where the Sabbath is. You still got everything else wrong.
Yeah, still has the
Jehovah's
same Sunday worship.
Congratulations, you recognize he has a name. You still got it wrong, but you got one thing there.
Yeah, the bringer of ruin, Hova. I gotta love that.
Yeah.
I had a guy actually write an article on that.
God's name we pray, amen. Yeah, God's name we pray, amen.
Let's throw in the Egyptian sun god on top of it all. But and they all do it. I actually had a guy once present a note to in a group I was in where he went on that he thinks it is Jehovah, and here's because he's going to bring so much ruin with him, when he returns. I said, so your God is the God of ruin. Yeah, there's no kidding.
By the way,
all these people were saying
he is going to bring a lot of ruin with him when he returns.
Yeah, he is.
Reading. Yeah, and the people he's going to ruin are the people who think his name is Jehovah.
Well,
no kidding.
Really, is it ruin? He's getting rid of all of the abominations. That's not ruin.
Yeah, which would include the name Jehovah. It would include the name Jehovah.
Yeah, he's going to destroy the things of man, but that ain't ruin. That's an improvement.
Yeah, it is. Of course it is. Yeah, it's like taking out the trash.
We're going to break out of the matrix, aren't we? I mean, that's
it's like taking out the trash is what he's going to do. And thank goodness, because how do you return to Eden unless you take out the trash?
Well, I mean, just let me throw up something here. It's sort of a metaphor. Everybody wants to blame the political actors, and hey, they're monsters. I think half of them are pedophiles now, and every other thing. I mean, they're just the worst of the worst. I mean, as you know, it's criminals in charge all around the globe.
Right.
Yet
politically, and
people want to. Yet, they're talking about getting rid of quote fake news. Are you kidding me? Have you read the nonsense?
Yeah, we're going to get rid of ABC, NBC, CNN.
I know.
That's what you would. Yeah, why wouldn't you
I will
blame?
tell you that there is a lot of fake news. Like a lot of the stories that get the highest viewership are stories that were literally conceived in Macedonia to make a tenth of a penny per click, which turns out to be big money for a massive. So there's a lot of fake news, and there's a lot of conspiracy news that appears on websites that is in fact fake news. And there's a lot of things, like when people send me things and say, "Hey, did you read this?" and I just won't go there because
but my thing,
you can't validate it. So there is a lot, but but the most fake news is the mainstream media.
Yeah, because people put their trust in the New York Times, in the Washington Post, and all the rest of it. But what I'm saying is now
the Bezos
where
press.
Their supposed
owned by Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, their supposed job is to be the watchdog of the political class, the royal class.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they've become a partier with them. That's all they've really done.
They have.
And they're just part of. They're in the same bubble that these idiots are in up there. Yeah. While the rest of us are working.
The fit that CNN had when Trump went on his first trip and didn't let the press pool come along with him on his airplane.
Oh, to go have a hamburger. It's just an insane.
Oh yeah, it was his private airplane, and he did not invite the press pool, and they just said that's totally unacceptable. He'll learn better.
No, I think they're going to learn if you want to know the truth. I think he's a lot smarter than any president I've seen before. I'm not sitting here worshiping at Trump's feet or he's going to save the planet or anything like that. I know better. But I do know this. I know that the 17 intel agencies that they were going on about that was sharing this information with WikiLeaks were really 17 intel agencies from inside the United States that had it with the Clintons. That's who it was really coming from. And you know, you sit and you look at this stuff and you watch what these people mouth, and they can't even do the study to find out what I can find out. And it's just insane.
Yeah, that's what's so amazing about the whole thing is you read so much nonsense, like the Ohio State fellow that rammed the car into those people and then brought out the butcher knife, and they all of the talking heads in the Justice Department say we don't know what his motivation was. Yeah, we don't know his motivation.
Yeah.
Well, we're really
what was
trying to
his name?
Where's
he from?
Was it a terrorist? Oh, he had an Islamic name, and he was he's yelling Allahu Akbar.
He was from Somalia and had lived in Pakistan half his life, and came over here within 4 years, had free college, and I want to know why the hell that happened.
Because Muslim women are being raped. That's why I'm doing it.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, it was so obvious that he was a Muslim acting out Islam, and yet they can't figure it out.
Well, no, but see, that goes back to what I'm saying. You know, here you got the Christians. I just want to kind of try to make this work. There's, you got the Catholic Church, and then you got the watered-down Christianity, and it's the same thing. And then you've got the political actors, and you've got these people who are supposedly the watchdogs of government, so it doesn't get out of control. Well, boy, they've done a hell of a bang-up job, haven't they?
Yeah, it's why the majority of what you read in the mainstream media is untrue. Most of what you hear in the mainstream media is untrue. False news is what they're presenting. Because what's happened with political correctness is that lies are correct and the truth is incorrect. And if you advance the truth,
2 + 2 does not
you're
equal
condemned
4.
and marginalized. If you advance the lies, you're a great hero. It's like the guy from the Titanic, what's his name? The actor.
DiCaprio. Now he's
and
now he's a scientist and an expert in global.
Because he's advancing the lies of political correctness. You know, he's being heralded. But if another celebrity said, "Oh, come on," you know. Global warming and global cooling have existed on this planet for millions of years. There's absolute proof that it has nothing to do with man. And that even if it has something to do with man, man isn't powerful enough
of his movies.
To change it. That person would be marginalized by the media and laughed at even though they were telling the truth.
By the way, I watched a doctor in climatology sit down in front of a group of senators, state senators in Washington State. And they said, "No, our information shows that it's warming. What do you have?" And he says, "Well, I've got the real numbers. You've got what's called diluted numbers." And they, what do you mean by that? Well, look at 1938. They've changed the number on your table. I'm going to give you guys all this paper so you can look at it. The globe is actually getting cooler. It's just not getting cooler based on the fake numbers they use. I mean, that's the truth of it. I mean, I watched it. I mean, he laid them to waste. They were embarrassed by the end of it. He knew exactly what he was talking about. It was his business to know. And he had all the paperwork to back it up. Yeah. So if somebody's going to go back and change numbers, they can do anything they want.
Exists for a singular reason. And the singular reason is wealth redistribution and power.
Yep.
That's why it exists.
It's just for taxation and regulation.
Control.
For power and control. It has, and wealth redistribution is how the leaders cause, and that's exactly what Yahowah wrote in Shamuel when he was talking about what government leaders are going to do. It is they take money from those who are productive and they give it to those who are loyal to them, who become dependent upon them, and that's the means of control. And global warming, climate change is all a wealth redistribution plan that is designed expressly for a singular thing, and that's world
wealth redistribution on a global scale. Take from
the
nations that have and give to the nations that don't.
Productive and making people dependent, and therefore enriching and empowering the elitist. That's why it exists. It exists for no other reason. You know, all these morons that are out there saying that Trump's going to rape the planet. He has no right to damage our planet. Oh, come on. It's just absolutely absurd.
Well, I've been waiting for these idiots to tear Obamacare down for the last 6 years, and finally that's going to happen, and I'm happy with that. And I don't care.
With that, but I don't know how much he's going to do. But the fact is that
I think he'll do it.
Health care costs in America skyrocketed at a greater rate this past year than any time in history. And so the Affordable Care Act is absolutely, unequivocally unaffordable. It raised
not only that, you got to be hit by a bus to use it. There's $10,000 deductibles out there, pal.
Of course.
It just doesn't work.
If you are productive and responsible and are paying for it, you're paying for the people who are not productive and who are not responsible. That is the nature of.
And they're the ones that are going to use it.
So
that's what socialism
is given to them free. Yes, and for the for example, we have health care, but because and I pay for it, but because the deductibles are so large, and because the policies that I wanted to buy can no longer buy, I never use it. So if I have a bugaboo, I go to one of those clinics that you just walk into and you put down your credit card.
You pay cash. It's what I do.
Yeah, prompt care.
It's what I do. It's just.
I don't use it.
That was the biggest.
So you pay
that
for
was
the insurance, and then you don't use the insurance because it's too expensive to use. But you have to have it, so you pay for it.
Right? They were laughing about how they got it over on Americans, and if Americans weren't so stupid, they never could have done it. They got caught laughing, talking that way. I mean, this is for real stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, guy that came up with the phony numbers that got it through Congress later acknowledged publicly that he made it all up. And if it wasn't for the fact that people are so unwilling to do the investigation and question things, that he never could have pulled it off. And therein lies the problem. The reason we come to understand that God's condemnation here in Yashayatu is against the Roman Catholic Church and Christianity and the political powers that have derived their influence from it is because we've done our research. We've made the connections. You've got to work at it if you want to know. The reason that whole sentence that we read of what God's against makes sense to us is we took the time to make the connections. We've done our research. Most people are unwilling to do it.
We informed ourselves, and we're rational.
That is correct.
Well, I think that's probably going a little far for you, JB, but okay. We'll go with it.
I've read his site. I can attest to him. Well, fellas, it's been fun. I missed not having the Captain Kirk with us, but he did try to call in. He is a very sick boy today. And
he needs to lay back and get better.
Yeah.
Well, Lisa said she wanted to call in too, but see what she went out and played with armadillos this week. And she got a bad case of leprosy. Yeah, she got a bad case of leprosy. And she went out to try to get that treated, and she got bit by a mosquito and got the Florida virus.
Zika virus. Zika virus.
Zika virus. So, it's kind of like a compound fracture at this point. It's just really bad news.
It's been a bad week. Maybe she can do the sign of the cross and 3 Hail Marys, and she'll be just fine. A couple of Heil Hitlers, and, maybe, I don't know.
Whatever.
Whatever works. We're just.
It's obvious God's afflicting her because it's a test of her faith. Everything that goes wrong in your life is God testing your faith, or the devil trying to tempt you away. One of the two.
Yeah, everything we are saying now is sarcastic. Please.
Way sarcastic. No doubt
sarcastic.
about it.
Yeah, way sarcastic. Yahowah hates religion and politics, and God makes no such promises that He's going to protect us from the little creepy
God
crawlies.
is not micromanaging your life.
No, if I get a creepy crawly because my granddaughter went to school and brought back somebody else's sniveling cold, it isn't God's fault, and He isn't going to fix it for me.
One of the things.
It's also not Satan's fault. It's just.
No, it isn't.
I did want to ask your opinion here because what I witnessed in that last election is just a rebellion where people it just looked like a rebellion to me.
It was.
And
they wanted something other than the norm.
That is correct.
And
it was the rebellion.
Yeah, it's my understanding that it was the intel community, mainly within the military, that fed Assange. And I heard that from Pachenik. He said on November 1st we initiated a soft coup. And he said me and 17 intel agencies, and I absolutely believe him because he was saying who was going to be the NSA director way back in February. And by the way,
it's also interesting there was a overall rebellion within the FBI. And probably one also within the CIA.
Well, the FBI was one of the intel
CIA
agencies
and the Special
involved.
Forces all know how despicable Hillary Clinton is. And so what it became is a rebellion against the known devil and was not an endorsement of the unknown devil.
No, it wasn't. They said they even took Bernie Sanders. They said that.
It was a rebellion against the known devil, and it was the intel community that fed WikiLeaks. It was not the Russians.
That's exactly right. But I want to point something out here, though. Yeah. Having said that, all the years I watched was involved in politics, and I know you were too. I've never seen a guy work harder. Every now and then I turn it on, just check. This guy's he's a machine. He really is.
Yeah,
I've never seen a guy like that, and I really think that this is just my opinion now. Not saying he can pull it off, but I really think that he intends to try to keep his words. That's what I think.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't think because
I knew you wouldn't.
He has reneged on almost everything he promised. I was in.
Well, he hadn't even got in there yet.
Right. I was opposed to almost everything he promised he was going to do. So the fact that he has capitulated verbally, renounced almost everything he's promised, doesn't bother me because I was never in support of what.
Well,
I
don't think.
promised.
I don't think that that's true, though. I just don't think that because I think he's still talking about a wall. He's still talking about getting rid of Obamacare.
He's already said that the wall is going to be some extensions to the fence. He's already changed that. He's changed everything.
No, he didn't. That's what the press said. He said, but I heard him directly say, "Okay, it's okay. We'll see."
All right. Yeah, we'll see.
It doesn't matter.
I will guarantee.
Yeah, there will not be a masonry wall that stretches across our border with Mexico. Not going to happen. Wouldn't solve anything if it was, but it's not going to happen. And the number of Hispanics, Central Mexicans, South Americans that are deported, rather than being 10 million or 5 million or 3 million, is going to be in the tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, but It won't even reach 1 million.
Oh, that part. Yeah, that part I believe. That part I believe.
Yeah.
But
I think by and large, even if he tries to keep his campaign promises, he's got too much opposition, both sides of the aisle, to get anything done.
Yeah, he's not going to.
Which really, that might be the best thing. If we have 4 years where nothing gets done, that might be the best thing for the country.
They really need to replace Obamacare, and they need to cut taxes. Those two things really need to happen. I'm not putting my faith in government. I just want them off my back.
There's some aspects of Obamacare that he likes.
Oh, and how you turn that into he's keeping Obamacare is crazy.
Well,
watch
and say he's keeping it. That is the one thing. I would not be surprised if within the first 100 days there is a radical change to Obamacare. And the liberals say, well, what are you going to do about the 30 million people that are now receiving benefits from it? They shouldn't be receiving benefits from it. So,
yeah, right.
Yeah,
if all he does is get rid of the penalties for not having insurance, I'll be okay with that.
Well, what they're going to do is put that back to the states. And by the way, there aren't 30 million. They took Medicare and put it in there. I mean, that's all that happened there. I mean, it's just nonsense anyway.
Well, there are more people. There are more people in Medicaid. There are more people in Medicaid, which is the young version, than there were previously by a significant number because they're giving it away free.
Sign up. It's free.
The two biggest factors are three biggest factors. Is they diminished our ability as those who are responsible or paying for health care. They've diminished our ability to choose what we want. They've increased our deductibles. They've increased our premiums. So that health care has very little value now for those who actually pay for it. They've increased the number who get it for nothing as if it were entitlement and a right, who are irresponsible even in terms of their own health. And then the two biggest issues with the cost of health care they did not address. One is that 80% of the health care budget goes to maintain a person's life for 1 year before they die. And you ought to spend less than 10% of the health care budget trying to prolong
you're talking
an
about
elderly person's
somebody's
life.
Dying in the hospital, you spend $250,000. Right. That is stupid when they know they're going to die anyway.
Right.
I agree with that.
It's just absolutely stupid. So, and that's
people should have the sense to stay home and die, if the truth be told.
Hospice,
I mean,
hospice.
That's just the truth of it.
That's what we did with my mother-in-law. It's hospice. Get them out of those expensive facilities and provide them hospice care. So that's the 80%, and the second biggest part is
legal fees.
Is legal. Yeah, it's legal. Malpractice and loss of litigation. That's why drugs are so much more expensive in the United States. Is they have to charge a fortune to maintain the staffs of lawyers and to pay out the large fines and fees. And so those are the two big.
Well, here's a statistic for you. Here's a statistic for Laodicea. If you look at Japan per capita, and now this was an older statistic, about 10 years ago I read, but Japan, and you go per 100,000 people, and then you go to the United States and you go, how many lawyers? Get this, 400 lawyers for every one lawyer they have in Japan. Hear that? 400 to 1.
Right.
What a waste.
Yeah.
You buy a loaf of bread, you're paying for a lawyer. You know you are.
Right. Now,
the most useless profession on the planet. They provide absolutely nothing of service, of value.
Yeah, there are some forms of law that actually have some merit, but there are not a lot. Not a lot of them. Yeah, intellectual property, for example, is one that does some good. So there are some that are positive, but for the most part, it is a negative profession. But we're talking about the healthcare. Little known, I've talked about it on this program, but the leading cause of death in America used to be heart disease, and second was cancer. Do you know what the leading cause of death in America right now is? No.
I think it's prescription drugs.
It is in some counties, non-prescription drugs. For example, in the county that I live in, the single greatest cause of death in the county that I live in is heroin overdose. But no, across America, The leading cause of death is no longer heart disease and cancer. It's no longer automobile accidents.
You mentioned this, and I forgot.
Yeah.
I was kind of astounded.
It's extraordinarily telling.
What
mistakes
is it?
in hospitals. Health
that's right.
Mistakes. Wrong medication.
I believe that.
Wrong treatment. Failure to treat. Hospital error. Medical error. Doctor error. Drug error. But mistakes within the system. Mistakes in the healthcare system is the number one cause of death.
Well, you got so many people handling everything today. I mean, you really do.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I mean, my daughter works in an emergency room, Haley. And by the way, my grandson's like 10 days old now, little Jack.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Named him Jack. Can you believe it? Jack. Oh,
Jack.
Hey,
my granddaughter's name is Zoli, so you know, yeah.
What was her name? What's her name again?
Zoli.
Zoli.
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything. But it's cute.
It's unique.
But it's unique. Yeah, unique.
No, my little granddaughter's Piper. I was talking to you one day when she came in.
That's cute.
She was just 18 months old, wanting to show me her dress. She was talking.
Yeah.
She thinks I'm just the king of the hill. I mean, that's all there is to it.
God. So is my granddaughter. Oh yeah. But what a marvelous part of life.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I love it. I love it when Piper's over. I do.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd say that.
The other day, I said, tell people that think they need to watch less TV to have a kid. They are so much more entertaining. I watch so much more TV just because I'm down on the floor watching her and playing with her now.
Right. Oh, of course.
And she is much more entertaining. Watching her learn something new, and it's great.
Yeah.
She's getting up there now. How old is she? JB?
She's almost 9 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's getting there. Is she walking now or still
every
crawling
month around? She's a little shy of walking. She's crawling now.
Yeah,
right?
Not quite walking. She's beginning to start crawling. She's getting herself up and trying to make the first few steps.
Piper was weird.
Quite there.
She never crawled. She scooted on her butt until she could walk.
Yeah, our granddaughter didn't crawl
that.
either. My son did. My eldest son didn't crawl either. My eldest son didn't crawl.
Really?
He went right from being stationary to walking. In fact, I remember
that's what I think Lynn's going to end up doing.
I got down on the floor and tried to teach him how to crawl. He just looked at me and laughed. And then this one day, he just got up and walked. You know, so you never know. But what I was going to say is that I'm constantly told by my daughter-in-law how appreciative it is for all the time that we spend with her daughter, our granddaughter, and you know, every time that she needs some time, we're there to pick her up and to watch over and to feed her and have her spend the night. And when she's here, we're playing with her nonstop, and she's constantly saying, you know, I want to tell you how appreciative I am. I said, why would you thank me for something like that? It's a wholly and completely enjoyable thing to do. And so, you know, pleasure is all ours. You know, that's like
thanking me for enjoying a steak dinner.
That is right. Exactly. So no, I do not need to be thanked for that, but appreciate the sentiment. The fact of the matter is, she's just fun to be around, and that's the nature of family. That's why God created the universe. You know, you look at the difference between a granddaughter or a daughter or a son or a grandson and our capability, and you realize, okay, it's gargantuan, but you also recognize that they can learn. And so teaching them and helping them is just such a huge part of life. And the more you teach them, the more you help them, the more pleasure you get out of the relationship. That's exactly what
that's
God is
true.
doing.
That is true. You know, one of the interesting things about the way they took the family apart, and I noticed this pattern with everything that the government did over the last, 40, 50 years. The first thing they did was got the wisdom out of the house. You know, used to be, grandma might live in the same house with you. You know that.
Right.
And of course, Social Security and Medicare took care of that. They don't need to be around you, so you lose that wisdom, if you will.
Correct.
Within that generation. You lose it.
Correct.
And then the next thing they did was, we got to get the woman out of the home. Now it's almost an institutional process that goes on from the time they're 6 weeks old. It is insane. It's insane.
Daycare. Yeah, daycare.
It's impossible. It's an impossible way of life.
And then indoctrination, which they call school.
Yeah, right.
Correct.
And based on what I've heard from many of these, quote, millennials, there is no education.
No.
I heard one ask the question,
people are indoctrinated.
Who discovered the United States? And the guy said Abraham Lincoln. So he said, hey, do you think he freed
remember when
the
they
slaves?
asked Gary Johnson, the Libertarian Party candidate, after they asked him about, what's your
Aleppo,
position on Aleppo, and he didn't know what Aleppo was. Do you know what the next question that was asked in the next interview? Can you please name for us the head of state of another
state
country
that you respect? Yeah, just one. He couldn't do it. He said the guy that used to run Mexico, I guess that would be Vicente Fox. That's what he said. And I just
to be fair, I couldn't name a head of a state that I would respect.
I respect, but I could certainly name the head of state of a whole lot of different countries.
Well, I mean, if you put me up against it, I'd say Ben Netanyahu. I mean, that's what I'd say. Okay. Now, whether I
would say
I think he's got the
head of
toughest
state that
job.
I have the most respect for, which is now like comparing snails I have met in my garden and saying, which snail do you think makes the slimiest track across the lawn? I would say that Netanyahu would be top.
If you put me up against it, okay, I'm not saying. I probably shouldn't even say that, honestly.
Yeah,
but that's what I would say.
Benjamin Netanyahu would be my favorite slug. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I'm not going to debate that point.
I really
agree
dislike
with it.
a lot of his positions. I'd put Putin up there in the top 5.
Well, if you're talking about just sheer leadership,
doing the job of a head of state of a country, I'd put him in the top 5.
Yeah, I know. Of course, you were supposed to go, how could you put him ahead of Obama? Well, Obama was actually trying to dismantle the country.
Yeah.
I can't believe, they did all these polls, but I know how those polls are done. It's kind of at the end, and you go, okay, would you say as a person you like, very much like, or ambivalent, dislike, or absolutely hate, this 5-point scale, Obama, and then they go, I like him. They just say that. But, how do you separate a politician from his policies? I mean, that's insane.
You can't.
Really.
Yeah, his words are
almost that's what they do
universally
in that
untrue.
question.
Right.
Yeah. Right. It's just an insane possibility. A guy came in and basically did all he could to destroy an economy, from what I could tell. I mean, it looked purposeful to me. It really did.
Well, the difference between
I would say it was hard
Barack Obama and
Putin
is actually looking out for the best interest of his country. Obama is looking out for the globalist interest.
Correct.
Yeah, which means that you have to be. Yeah, but when you say you're looking out for the globalist interest, they made their position clear for the last 4 or 5 years that other standards of livings have to go lower so we can all be the same. In other words, they were telling you you're going to live like a guy in China, and eventually it'll get there.
Yeah, socialist, secular humanism, wealth redistribution. It's just the reality. But as bad as Obama was, I personally think that George W. Bush...
Your hatred is more for Bush. Yeah, I look at them as the same. I look at the Clintons, the Obamas, and the Bushes as exactly...
Okay, so we're rating garden slugs again, huh?
Yeah, well, I look at them all as pretty much as low as you can go. Liars, people that want to enrich themselves. I really saw Obama as in my opinion, I think he was a narcissistic psychopath. I mean, I couldn't even stand the way he talks with his
I think
S's.
So was Bush and both Bushes. Really,
I just saw Bush as a stumbling, demented child king. The second Bush. No, I really did. I mean, I just saw him that way. I could. That's pretty much where he was. Well, I mean, what did he ever do?
I'm certainly not going
himself?
to vouch for his intellect because I've met him and he doesn't have any. So
right.
I'm not going to vouch for his intellect.
Well, I can imagine you trying to relate to this garden slug, and that's about what it was.
I did. I spent 6 hours with him.
I can't imagine.
And, we were incapable of carrying on a conversation. It was the most
masochism
awkward.
Would be the word there. Yeah, I can't imagine. I can't imagine you doing that, but
no.
you did it.
But but I didn't know Yahweh at the time. I wouldn't do it today. But I did. I still had the same. Apart from knowing Yahweh, which is powerfully different, because before you know Yahweh, you can know lots of things, but you really don't understand much of anything. And after you know Him, you understand most everything. And so it's a much more powerful position to be in than I was in when I met Him. But anyway.
Well, but that's our worth, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, that is our worth now. That's a big deal.
That's our worth.
I think about that when I think about how bad things are in this world. One thing I do think about is the true knowledge that we have that others need. I mean, they need that knowledge, and they don't even know it. It's almost insane. It's really, when you can lay things in front of people and show them these things and say, now, how do you suppose that Yahweh knew this at that time? And they just look at you and they go, I don't know. I'm well, you better figure it out, right? I mean,
you may want to figure it out. There's a lot at stake. I'm working on editing right now, the 11th chapter of Observations, and it's all about it's focused on a single thing, which is the test. The 10th chapter was focused entirely on henna. The 11th chapter transitions to the last use of henna relative to the covenant. But it's all about the test that Yahweh prescribed for Abraham, that Abraham passed. And, you ought to want to know what that test entails and how to pass it.
Yeah, it's done through knowledge. And he didn't even make it difficult. I mean, he didn't even make it difficult.
No, it's open book. No, it's open book.
Yeah, I know.
But
I know. I'm sitting here throwing fits at the world, but there's nothing we just keep sharing the words. That's it.
Right.
We just keep sharing the words.
Our wealth is in our understanding of the Torah. That's our wealth.
But I'm going to shoot, when this note's done, I'm going to shoot it over to you, the one I was telling you. He talks about how they go to Bashar.
Okay.
And how, in the end, how Yahweh, this is from Edom now, and how Yahweh breaks their arrows. Well, what's right there in Bashar? I'll tell you what's right there. Besides that mountain and the lentil soup, which is exactly what Esau, tried to use. It's the nuclear facility. So when they try to use those nuclear weapons in the end, he's going to break their arrows.
Yeah, you're talking about the one that the United States provided to Iran during the period of what did he call it? It was Henry Kissinger's exchange called Atoms for Peace, and that's when we built the nuclear reactor for Iran. That was, and then we supplied it with with uranium-235. Fissionable uranium to fuel that reactor, and that became the basis of their nuclear program.
Yes, that's the place, right there.
Yeah,
and that's right where that mountain is, the one that's closest to the sun, called Ra, in the area where they eat lentil soup as the regional dish.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Isn't that astounding?
It's going to be interesting to see who actually starts the nuclear phase of the Magog War, because it could well be Iran.
I don't know who will start it, but if they start it, it won't matter. He says breaks their arrows.
We know who's going to finish it.
Exactly who he's talking about.
The United States and Russia are going to finish it, but we don't know who's going to start it. I suspect Iran.
When that happens, the whole world goes into total chaos from that moment.
Of course.
Yeah,
of course. Totally. Yeah, that's the midpoint of the tribulation. From that point on, it's hell on earth.
Yeah,
that's why,
total chaos.
When you look at the tribulation, there really is two phases of it, and the first phase is bad, but it's nothing compared to that second to 3.5 years. the real tribulation for that last 3.5 years. Yes, yeah, there's still options and choices, and a lot of stuff that goes on in the first 3.5 years that is you can work around, but you can't work around a nuclear winter and Apophis and all that sort of thing. It's a whole different scenario.
Yeah, no food, no water,
no food, no bill. Yeah, it's and diminished access even to sunlight. I mean, it's going to be an extraordinarily depressing circumstance. All right, fellas. See you next week. I've enjoyed the discussion. We'll hope that Kirk can join us. But we had a good time.
Yeah, hey, I did too. But hey, thanks for depressing us all right there at the end, Craig. Thanks a lot.
Oh yeah, hey, my pleasure. Yeah, no.
Yeah, I know.
Hey,
it was worth
where you're going to be when the second phase of the Magog War begins?
Exploring the universe.
Hey, you betcha. It ain't going to be here. It isn't going to be here. So
I ain't even going to have an interest. There's going to be something
not to worry about
near the end that I have an interest in seeing, but that point, I have no interest in seeing it. I'll be gone. I don't want to see it. I don't want to hear about it. I'm just going to go.
Yeah, the reason I don't want to see it is there'll be still people that I know and care about that are going to succumb to it, and that would make me very sad to see. So there's a lot of other things we'll be doing, and that's not going to be one of them.
I got better things on my plate.
I got better things on my plate, yeah, than to be tormented by that which we cannot influence.
Yeah,
God's not going to let us come back and perform miracles on behalf of those. Yeah, he's just not going to allow it. He can't allow it. It wouldn't be fair. There we are. All right, guys. Talk to you next week. Look forward to it.
Talk to you next week.
Okay. Good night. Bye-bye.